Hi, this is Wesley Fryer, and this is a response to a question for the ProTecht 2008 project from students at Lawson Middle School in Cupertino, California. And this is one of the most basic questions to start with when we're having a conversation about digital citizenship. And the question that students posted was, what is digital citizenship? I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to use a rather low-tech way to show this because I don't have a way of really putting this into this recording. But this is a picture, if you can see that with a reflection, of cowboys on a trail drive. And I really think that when we're talking about digital citizenship, we're talking about things that have to do with being on the digital frontier. You as students, we as teachers, any age you are of being a learner, the technologies and the issues that are coming up today when it comes to the digital information environment are in many cases similar to things that we've seen before and we've dealt with before in the face-to-face analog world, but in some cases they're different. And I think that we can draw a lot of analogies to what happened in pioneer days and the ways that pioneers equipped themselves to be able to be effective on, in a new environment to what we're seeing today. Digital citizenship to me is two basic things, and I know you all are working with a framework that Dr. Mike Ribble and Dr. Gerald Bailey at Kansas State University have kind of drawn up. And actually, Mike, I had a chance to interview him a while back, wrote up his dissertation in education at Kansas State about this whole idea of digital citizenship. For me, rights and responsibilities are the two key parts of digital citizenship. And the reason I say that is because when we think of a traditional conception of citizenship, a lot of times those are the two things that we focus on. If I'm going to be a good citizen, I'm not only going to need to know about my rights, exercise my rights, take action based on my rights, but I'm also going to need to understand responsibilities. Because rights are not given in a country like ours in the United States without some expectations of some duties or some obligations that I'm going to have to do. And so, we have freedom of expression, right? In the United States, that's in our Bill of Rights. And in a lot of countries, there is a guarantee that you as a citizen of that country have the freedom to express yourself. However, there are limits to what you can do with that freedom of expression. You can't go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire. Even in your school in the United States, you have a right of free expression, but you are not able legally to disrupt the educational process. And so citizenship in your community, in your school, in your state, in your country has to do with rights, but it also has to do with responsibilities, and it has to do with limits. I think that when we're talking about digital citizenship, in a lot of cases, when we talk about responsibilities, we're talking about ethics and what the right thing to do is. Again, let's think about, cowboys and people on the frontier and the things that were appropriate and right to do. When you encountered somebody, when you encountered, people who were living there in the land, those could be other settlers, those could be Native Americans who had lived there previously. There were things that may or may not have been written down and formally codified at the time the frontier was being explored, but there were still things that people would do or not do, because they were the appropriate or the right or the wrong thing to do. I think the analogy of the frontier is really appropriate to what we're talking about today because there is danger out here on the virtual frontier. There are bad things that you can run into. There are people making bad choices, out there. And in a similar way as to where you could certainly get into trouble if you were out on the frontier by yourself and you didn't have the right, support equipment, you didn't have the right tools. A similar kind of analogy can be made today to the digital information environment. So I think it's very important that you as students realize you are modeling behavior for other students that are going to be coming after you. I mean, when I was in school, I did not have an opportunity to learn about digital citizenship because we didn't have an internet. The internet did not exist when I was in school, elementary school, middle school, high school, didn't exist. So I had an opportunity to learn about traditional citizenship, but not digital citizenship. And you may not see yourself as a leader now, but I would encourage you to recognize that leadership is a choice. And when you choose to do things online and talk to other people about those things, whether you're making an appropriate choice or an inappropriate choice, you are influencing those around you. And in many ways, you're blazing a trail. And so hopefully that trail that you're going to be blazing is going to be an appropriate one that others are going to want to follow, because you are, in many respects, being a trailblazer. I think I'll also just say, and I'm going to wrap this up, that we have rights and responsibilities, and we need to understand how to appropriately exercise those rights and responsibilities. Because, like I said, there are limits in the face-to-face world with what we can do with our freedom, and the same thing is true on the information environment. An example might be at your school. If you're the first students to have laptops in your school district, and you get to take those home and bring those back, there will be people just waiting to see who is going to screw up, who is going to mess up, and give us this reason to say, oh, these kids don't need these laptops, these kids don't need access, they're not responsible enough to deal with this. And you better believe people are going to jump on those examples and try and block the way for pioneers, because there's some people that don't want the frontier to be expanded. They're happy with the way things are, or they're fearful of what lies out there on the frontier. And so in many respects, your role as a trailblazer is really, really important. I'm going to conclude with one more image. This is the image of a railway. This is actually at French Henry. This is a book about Philmont Scout Ranch. I'm a scout and grew up as a scout, and so when we talk about citizenship, I kind of connect with this a lot because I've studied citizenship and talked a fair bit about that. I like that picture of a track, of a railway, because the places you're going today with this study and with the research and with the work that you're going to do online, with the collaboration you're doing with others, the creation you're doing of media projects, in many ways you are going to be creating a track, creating a rail, a virtual rail that other students have never had an opportunity to go on before. And so I hope you take very seriously this opportunity that we have together, and you have, independently, and there with your teacher, wherever you happen to be on planet Earth today, to explore this idea of digital citizenship. And one of the things that I'm going to do as part of this conversation that we're going to have is not only create some of these video responses, but I'm also going to create some voice threads, and I'm going to be linking to those within our project wiki, within your project wiki, and inviting you to share some of your thoughts as we engage in this conversation. So those are a few of my thoughts about digital citizenship. It's a lot like being on the frontier. It's a lot like being pioneers. In many cases, not everything's written down and codified, but some things are. There are limits and boundaries to how we can appropriately use the rights and responsibilities that we have. And together we have an important obligation to model appropriate use, because we're not the only ones coming out here on the frontier. There's a ton of other people who are coming too, and they want to learn the things that we learn as we're out here on the frontier, and we have a responsibility to go back and talk to them about those things. It's far more than a conversation just about internet safety. It's about appropriate use, and it is about the rights and responsibilities which we have in this digital environment. And those are many, and we'll be talking more about those, I know, in the days and weeks ahead.